Hello, survivors. Welcome to the State of Decay 2 stream. I'm your host, Geoffrey Card, and the day has finally come. Update 33 has landed. It's called the Heart Attack Update, and a lot of you are already playing it. But I thought it might be fun to get a couple of the creators of this update here on the stream to talk through the patch notes and reveal if there's something new in the game that maybe you haven't heard of yet. So let's start out by introducing Randy Lambert. He is our design team lead on State of Decay 2, my neighbor, and an all-around super dude. How are you doing, Randy?
Pretty good. I'm excited to show some people some of our best work.
It really honestly is some of our best work. I mean, you guys spent a year on this, and it is a revolutionary change to the game, and I've already been enjoying it myself on my own game here at home. I sneakily was avoiding playtesting your stuff for a really long time, just so I could enjoy it as a consumer, and I'm having a great time. But let's introduce our other guest. That is Brandon Martin, a senior quality assurance analyst. He has been on this project for ages, and he's seen everything by now. How are you doing, Brandon?
Toast, but great all around either way.
Cool. Well, it's good to have you here. And then also, of course, we have got Joe Swarner, who he is playing the game right now. We're not seeing his face, but he's going to be providing us with gameplay in the background, and we might pop in to watch what he's doing so he can illustrate some of the changes that we're talking about. Because I'm streaming his video in, it's a little bit choppy. It's not going to be as high quality as we usually get gameplay on this stream. So we're probably going to keep it a little bit smaller on the screen just so that the choppy frame rate doesn't bug you too much. But we'll jump into it whenever we want to illustrate something and show you how something works. Well, to start, let's just go through the patch notes. So I'll put a link, if you're watching this later on YouTube especially, I'll put a link down in the doobly-doo so that you can go and actually read our patch notes yourself. But let's just go through the patch notes section by section and talk through what is in the Heart Attack Update. So the best place to start talking about the Heart Attack Update is the Plague Hearts. So, Randy, do you want to tell us about what's different about the Plague Hearts, what it means for a Plague Heart to be dormant now, and how you wake them up?
Before, Plague Hearts were just basically kind of always on, but kind of focused more on their immediate territory and surrounding area. Now, they're actually going to start dormant and become awake once you enter plague territory and start messing around, doing certain things, killing zombies, being spotted by screamers. Then the plague heart is actually going to start sending infesting hordes out, trying to create infestations between it and your base, eventually reaching your base, and then sieging it directly via these new things called siege sites.
So Joe was just showing us the difference that you got this sort of grayed out sleeping Plague Heart icon for a dormant Plague Heart, and then you got the bright red, the familiar Plague Heart icon for an awake Plague Heart. Now, what is the process of actually waking up a Plague Heart? Because when you start the game, like you said, they're all dormant. How do you wake a Plague Heart up in the new system?
Messing around in plague territory is definitely how you're going to do it. Getting near them. The idea now is that the plague hearts are kind of orchestrating the zombies and trying to collect them, pull them into infestations and hordes and all these things. So you messing with zombies or getting spotted by screamers, which is kind of their lore, their job is to be the eyes and ears of the infestation. Doing things that would generally cause havoc in plague territory will wake up the plague heart that is controlling that plague territory.
So havoc includes killing zombies. It includes getting noticed by screamers, causing screams. Is there anything else on that list, or is it mostly those two?
It's mostly player action. There are a few things like I've seen a lot of people. I've been watching a lot of the streams and a lot of people playing. I've watched several people try and put like the really loud black cat fireworks right next to the plague heart and see if that wakes it up. It does not. They don't have ears, so it is not a. It's more like they're sensing you through the sensory apparatus of the zombies, less that they are one big ear that is trying to listen to everything in the region.
So does it differ by difficulty level? Like, is it easier to sort of run around and cause havoc without waking a plague heart in green compared to in lethal?
Yes. The amount, each action that you take increments the awareness level, changes from difficulty to difficulty pretty starkly. Like I believe it's On lethal, two screams from a screamer will wake up a plague heart, whereas I think on green it's in the neighborhood of 8, 7. So we're much more forgiving on green, and I think even on dread, you should be able to like floor it through one part of plague territory to another and get out. Maybe without, you got a pretty good chance of waking a plague heart up, but you could do it if you needed to get through it really quickly. Green, you can take a casual saunter through plague territory and not wake up a plague heart.
As long as you're not charging straight through the middle of a horde, that's what's going to wake up a plague heart.
And definitely don't go like smack one with a bat. That will always wake it up. As long as you're not actively hurting the plague heart, you have a little bit of leeway based on your difficulty.
So what kind of work went into like arriving at these values, like knowing how much effort needs to go into like waking up a plague heart at different difficulty levels? Was that a lot of play testing, a lot of messing around?
A lot of internal play testing. It's when you come up with a system that has no in-game parallel, and you're creating all this new stuff. You just take wild stabs at your first few variables and see what works. We did a lot of internal play testing before we sent it off to players in PTR, but then PTR really helped us fine-tune and find comfortable values for each difficulty. There's probably still some fine-tuning that can still go on, but I'm pretty happy with the numbers where they are.
Brandon, was your team the sort of the first line of defense against getting those numbers horribly wrong?
Yes, and then also like probably subsequent attempts. Like there was always like the one screamer screaming and then it waking a heart and be like, this feels bad. Why is this bad? And then I was like, hey, you're not aware of like the zombies you're killing also adding to that total until a screamer screams and then pushing over the top and then putting in those little what's it called?
So you got
just stop gaps to help prevent like that screamer being that one event and giving you a warning.
Okay, yeah. So you all tried a lot of different rules as you went and sort of arrived at the current state of things based on having tried a lot of things out.
Yeah, it's not like a quota of like exactly 2 screamer screams and 5 zombies. It's like they're all in their bucket.
So one question that I've heard a lot from players is, once a plague heart becomes awake, is there a way to make it become dormant again?
Death.
No. Death. Your
Victory.
death or the plague heart's death?
Either will suffice.
If
you wipe out your community, the plague heart will.
Yeah, let's say if you wipe out your community,
your community dies. The plague heart will eventually move on from you.
I thought you meant player death though. Like getting your character killed doesn't do it, right?
Man, that would almost be a decent trade in some difficulties. But no, there's no sleepy lullaby that works on them. That would be funny.
Yeah. And then another thing that I actually didn't realize at all until I was playing the game on my own is what happens, like, because you were mentioning the fact that when a plague heart is awake, it is constantly sending out hordes and infestations to infest the world. When you kill that plague heart, what happens to its hordes and infestations?
The infestations actually start withering, which means that over time you'll see them kind of go gray, and then I believe it varies depending on difficulty. I'd have to double check, but I think the rate at which it withers is I think it's around like 30 minutes per severity level-ish, I want to say.
Okay,
but yeah,
so it takes some
over
time.
Like a level 3 infestation will take a lot longer to wither and away to nothing than a level 1. But it's the hordes. I think also I think they can. There's various things that depend on what happens there, but in general, taking out the plague heart will stop everything that plague heart has been orchestrating for a bit. It sometimes may get wrapped up into another plague heart that's also awake or something, but in general, offense is a good defense.
Okay, so each infesting horde and each infestation is aware that, like, I belong to this plague heart. And when the plague heart is killed, it's like, okay, I'm going away now. And it might be replaced by another infestation or another horde by another plague heart, but that particular one is gone.
Correct. That spot is a good spot, obviously, for other plague hearts to send infestation. So it may get reinfested or something, but it's just not going to get stronger at that point unless you have other plague hearts actively trying to hunt you down. Then they can kind of cooperate together and kind of push the infestations towards your base in tandem. It's not like this plague heart doesn't know that this plague heart has an infestation here. It knows, so it'll try and put one here, which is a little bit closer. So it's a little bit smarter, but yeah, in general, if you're limiting the amount of plague hearts you have awake, you can really fight back against the system by taking them out.
So yeah, go ahead, Brandon.
You can also just highlight infestations to double check which one belongs to which heart.
Oh, you can actually tell that? Joe, do you want to check that on the map whenever you're not about to be murdered by zombies? I'd love to see that. And actually, this might be just a good time to sort of move on to talking about infesting hordes generally, and just sort of how they work. But we'll get into that in just a second. Okay. So we are over that. So, okay, there we go. Look at that. Okay, so where does it say? So you've got this. Is it? Oh, yeah, it's got a little glowing highlight. Unmark that thing. Yeah, so you see it's got a little glowing highlight on the plague heart that created it. So now you know if you go kill that plague heart, then that infestation will wither away. Thank you, Joe, for pointing that out.
Yeah, and then the same with this infestation.
Right. Okay, so that one is connected to. Oh, that one looks like it's connected to.
This one might actually be an edge case that we might need to reconsider, because this also tells us about the site.
Oh, that the site is covered by both.
So the site, the site is covered by this plague heart and its plague territory, whereas this infestation originates from this heart. So I was going to go kill this heart, but I don't want these infestations during the stream to wither.
Gotcha. Yeah, we do want to hold on to them. That's a good idea.
But I could go kill this plague heart, it looks like, without much consequence.
Yeah, go commit some zombie murder while we talk about infesting hordes. So infesting hordes. You were talking about, like, they're a new type of horde. Well, actually, I don't know if they're actually that new. We did have a version of them that were just hidden before. But basically, these are hordes that are going and actually trying to create infestation. So how do they actually work, Randy? How does an infesting horde decide where it's going, and how can the player tell what it's trying to do?
That's actually kind of related to your noise, your base noise, if you guys remember that.
Oh, yeah.
That is now kind of it's less about, triggering sieges, which was a random chance, to just trigger a mission that ran sieges based on noise levels. Now it's your base noise is going to determine how effective a plague heart can find your base. So every infestation has these kind of ticks where it decides what to do. If it tries to spread, if it tries to call in reinforcements and get stronger. I think the noisier you are, the more things kind of lend themselves towards finding you and literally creating infestations towards your base. So being stealthier, being quieter means that it has a little bit harder time trying to actually siege you or threaten you with sieges. But that's an aside. The infesting hordes, the way that they work is that the plague heart basically is going to narratively, he's collecting all the weird ambient zombies around him to try and create a little forward strike team to go and find your base and siege it. And that's what the infestations are now, is effectively just little bases for the plague heart to stockpile soldiers on their way to attacking your base, which is how you should be treating siege hordes or infestation hordes. They're always going to have a screamer in the middle, kind of wrangling them and controlling them and dictating where they're going, and that's definitely an easy point of dispersal if you're looking for it. I think we've also given quite a few of them bloaters, so that you can't just roll right over them in your car. You're gonna have to try and take some careful shots and manage them, but there's all sorts of tools in the game now to help you manage infesting hordes. But rather than have infestations just randomly pop up, we wanted to give you a way to fight the tide.
So whenever you see one of these hordes on the map, you can like mouse over it basically and sort of, does it name its destination? Like, can you tell where it's going?
It was a little bit hard. We experimented with that, with the site names of like where they're going. It would tell you the exact site, but it would be things like, the Big Red Barn, which is a little bit difficult for players to unpack exactly where it is. So, it's less about we did add a helpful little directional carrot on the infesting hordes for that reason, so you can kind of predict where they're going based on the map visuals.
Okay, yeah, that works. So, were there any problems trying to get the hordes to path properly? Because back when hordes were just there to wander around and cause trouble, it didn't matter that much where they were headed, and the player didn't have any expectations of where they were headed. But now it's really important that a horde start at a certain spot and get to a certain spot. What kind of work went into making sure that actually worked reliably?
Oh man, a lot.
You seem traumatized. You got like a 1,000-yard stare.
Yeah, no, I just remembered that. Did you know that the Falstack map has roughly 5 times as many navigational nodes as all our other maps?
And when he says Falstack, he's talking about the Trumbull Valley map, the Trumbull Valley core map. No, I did not know that. It is. I know that it is one of our more complex maps because it's basically adapted from a previous game that had entirely different constraints. We tried to replicate it.
That was a lot to untangle because basically what would happen is in spots where if you ever look at a navigation tree on a video game, it's a bunch of straight lines and then little nodes, that the designer or whoever is putting down, and then the lines and the paths are all generated typically by the engine. The more densely you pack those nodes, the more chance that an AI is going to get lost when it's trying to pathfind, when it's saying, I'm on node A and I'm trying to get all the way over here. But in between me is a giant cluster of nodes. I've got to do all this math and all this potential to get lost and all this potential to wander halfway through and then forget my destination and then kind of, the more complex it is, the more chances for things to go wrong. And like you said previously, it wasn't like our zombies were really pathing around using these node networks for any real severe thing. I think they were mainly used for invisible zombies when we would need to, send a zombie here or there. It wasn't really something that the player tracked. So we had to clean up a lot of the pathing manually, just node by node. There were a lot that were under terrain or disconnected or things. I just went on a fun little visual scavenger hunt for a while, pulling these things apart and untangling knots.
Brandon, was there when we were talking about infesting hordes wandering on the map? Were there any funny bugs that emerged?
I think it's just the fact they keep going underground and testing that. It turned into a lot of just staring at the map and just waiting. And we have debug to speed up time, and so you just would get hordes moving at 10 times the regular speed, zooming all over the map. And I've did and then you see them get stuck at a place for maybe 5 seconds, which is then 5 times 50 is 500 seconds. You're why are they there? And then having to go in there and be Randy, look at these coordinates right here. They're getting stuck, and then just doing that for all 5 of the maps, and just jumping back and forth, and also making sure it wasn't due to a noise, because noise can also affect that navigation.
Yep, we'd get a bunch of fun videos from QA of a horde arrive, getting near your base, stopping, vanishing from existence, and then reappearing somewhere completely incorrect, that physically they can't even path to.
And
I think earlier was spawning. I think it would just spawn it would not stop spawning hordes, so there would be on the map that would also just tank perf on top of that.
So your voice dropped out for a second. What would happen because they were spawning so many hordes?
It just wouldn't stop spawning them, so it would just be a string of green icons going across the map,
like a caterpillar snaking from.
Your frame rate would just start immediately shuddering, and then by the time the snake made its way out onto a main road, you were pretty much in single-digit frames,
or just crashing.
Wow. Oh, that's. I'm glad you fixed that one. I definitely wouldn't want to. Even if my frame rate could handle it, I wouldn't want to have to actually deal with that many hordes at the same time. All right, so let's get into infestations, because once these infestation hordes that we've been talking about arrive at a place, they make an infestation. And now we've got there's some new UI surrounding infestations, and I don't know, are you sneaking up on an infestation now, Joe? Can you show us a little bit about what they look like on the map?
So you asked about withering infestations. I think this one's already withering because it came from the plague heart that I killed.
Gotcha.
And
okay.
Then these are not withering and these are siege sites. So there are now two different types of infestations. One is siege sites, and then the other one is just these regular infestations like this.
Yeah, so we're going to get onto siege sites in just a second, but zoom in real quick on one of those infestations that's got a number by it, because I would love to sort of like let's remind everybody what these numbers mean. So you got a number 2 on that one. There's a 1 over on that gray withering one. Actually, both of those withering ones have got 1s on them. What does this number mean? Randy, do you want to take that?
The severity level. Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just watching Joe play.
Yeah, no, it's great.
I'm like, yeah, those are the severity levels. So every infestation, and including siege sites, which are just a type of infestation, they can have level 1, 2, or 3, and that just determines how big of an infestation it is. And what that number represents is how many siege hordes have arrived and are currently stashed at that location, or infesting hordes. So an infesting horde will come from Plague Heart, arrive at an uninfested spot, create a level 1 infestation. You'll see a 1. That infestation can choose to move to a new location or get a reinforcement. If it gets reinforcement, another infesting horde will come from the Plague Heart or maybe a nearby infestation, and then it will bump it up to a 2. The total zombies of 2 infesting hordes will now linger around that infestation, and then you get the same idea for a 3. By the time you get to 3, you're getting some crazy stuff. You got chances for juggernauts, and it gets real bad at an infestation 3.
So yeah, so in the earlier version of infestations would just sort of grow on their own. They didn't come from a plague heart. They weren't being orchestrated through hordes. But now, so that number, if that number is going to go up or down, that's entirely because hordes are entering and leaving. There isn't some other thing that's making them swell and shrink.
Correct. This will be based on like the conduction of zombies around the map. So you'll see if you have an infested site that has a 2, and there's a 1 that's closer to your base, that 2 may lose 1, go down to a 1, and then send a part of its payload to that new one and make that one a 2. So you'll see it kind of flow organically. Those numbers can go up and down, but you'll always see an infesting horde that it is either coming or going in order to make those numbers increase or decrease. So you can always intercept it.
So what are the rules for clearing an infestation now? Because those are different from the way they used to be.
So you can clear an infestation now by, like we were saying, narratively, the screamers are kind of like the zombie conductors. They're the ones managing on behalf of the plague heart. So if you take out the screamer and just kind of back away and leave, the infestation will disperse on its own. Those zombies will just kind of like disperse naturally back into the natural ambient population, more or less, and then. So if you're trying to strategically take out infestations because you're under real genuine threat, you can just take a long range weapon, pop the screamers. If it's an infestation severity 1, there's 1 screamer. If there's an infestation severity 2, there's 2. And guess what? For 3, there's 3. So it should be easy to remember and be like, oh, okay, I'm seeing what I'm doing. I'm having a real impact. This one is a 2. There's 2 screamers. Snipe, leave. Your base is no longer in threat from that site.
So, Brandon, as somebody who has to clear more infestations professionally than most people do even for fun, is it a relief not to have to hunt down that last missing zombie that you can't figure out where it is?
It's definitely nice. It just, in the past, knowing there could be one on the roof. But then they're also we also went and purposely made it to where you can't attract zombies out of the site to de-infest it. So I remember that was a legitimate strategy before, throwing noisemakers, get them to leave. Oh. But then the design was like, no, that's a little bit too good.
So now they're all aware, I am part of this infestation, and...
Yeah, there's no walking off the job here.
Okay, that's cool. What about loot from fighting an infestation? There actually is a way to get loot from it now, aside from just looting the house afterwards.
Yeah, I think there's all non-screamer freaks will drop it's the top tier loot table that it's spawned from. I've seen reports of a lot of good stuff they're dropping.
So non-screamers, that includes bloaters, ferals, and juggernauts, and all 3 of those will sometimes appear at infestations. When do they start showing up at different difficulty, at different severity levels?
Yeah, or sometimes even just ambiently.
Oh, you mean they just might show up and join the infestation from the outside? Is that a thing?
Potentially.
Okay, cool. Well, that's I definitely I was testing this out in Lethal Zone, and I was running into these monsters all the time, but I couldn't tell if I was running to them because of the infestations or just because they were around. I have heard somebody said that infestations also raise the ambient spawn of zombies around them. Is that true?
I think that's actually one of the infestations have been an interesting system to work with, because I think that was always true. It was just really hard to tell.
Yeah, that's one of the problems with working on a game that has so much randomness to it, is just you can't tell the difference between something being systemically different and you just having an unlucky day.
Right. It's one of the big reasons that we wanted to change infestations and sieges was just to make them a bit more obvious mechanically, to where the player could see and predict and interact with them a bit more, because they weren't really robust systems. I believe the way that it's worked is that infestations, when they're active, increase the ambient population, and then when you clear an infestation, there is like a decrease in the nearby zombie population. So you do get like a break in addition to clearing the infestation, lowering your set threat of siege, and the overall system being pushed back. You're also like clearing out a little bit of pocket of safety for yourself.
Yeah, I think you can see like there's a heat map on the map from previous updates that Zoe put in. There's like a little shader.
Like a heat map, like a debug tool that you can use to sort of make sure that it's working right.
No, like if you open the map, you can see like a shade of red that if you kill,
yeah,
you're out, and that's like a direct indication of zombie population.
I forgot all about that. Hey, Joe, do you want to open your map for just a second?
You can also see it on the minimap.
It's such a big game.
Not behind me, though.
Even the people that work on it are regularly peeling back layers that are astonishing.
Red heat map. This place mostly empty.
Okay, gotcha. So you can actually see that the map will get a little bit redder if you've got a lot of infestations in the space. That's pretty cool. All right, so let's talk about sieges. So in my personal game where I've been testing this out, I haven't tried a siege yet. And so I don't really know how they play out firsthand. You guys want to walk me through, maybe Brandon, do you want to walk me through like what the process is of having a siege actually happen to you?
So when you have a siege happening, like it's how it plays out originally. You get a mission that tells you to get to your base, and that's when you have 2 or 3 siege sites around your base that have whatever the predetermined number or level they are. And then once you get there and it sends a wave, it will send out a siege or attacking horde to your base. And once it gets to your safe zone, it then initiates the attack, where it will send the zombies as part of that infestation to attack you. And then you clear all of those out, and then each of those sites will then send one more wave of, or one more attacking siege until all of them are gone. And then once you fend off all of those waves in each one, it will then like pretty much, it'll kill the siege infestation, which is your reward for it surviving that siege, on top of also getting prestige at the end.
So rather than just spawning zombies sort of in random locations around your base and sending them in, you're actually getting the zombies from those infestations. Like there's a specific set of zombies. Like these are the things that are threatening you, and when the siege starts, it pulls them out. And then when you're done with the siege, all those siege infestations are gone.
And then potentially sound can also affect them. So you could get one wave that's slightly weaker because some of the other zombies got attracted by previous or future wave. So you can get 2 waves in one go, as opposed to just one wave that's like equally as strong as the next one, to add some more variation to it.
Okay, cool. Randy, do you have anything you want to add, like about just how it plays out and what the players' options are when it comes to these invasions?
Yeah. So there's our engineers put in some really good thematic things. There's the whole right now, before the siege kicks off, there's a whole part where they just kind of circle your base, and then all the screamers scream at once, and there's a whole like attack phase. So we're trying to make it very clear like what's happening and what your options are at every moment. Once everybody screams, your chance to like maybe sneak out and prune a siege site real fast probably went away. You're going to be needing to defend the base once it kicks off, unless you're on a lighter difficulty, and then you've got a lot of options available to you. But typically, like when you see the siege hordes arriving, they have to come from the siege sites. So not only can you intercept siege hordes and kill them before they even siege your base, you can intercept siege sites and take them out before they manage to send the hordes to congregate around your base and then trigger a siege.
So right now, in Joe's game, if he wanted to target those orange sites that are on his map, he could go over, take them out, and then if he continuously does that, there's just no danger of sieges. He will never have to deal with a siege because he's preemptively.
Yeah, you are basically pushing the. I wish I could think of a better metaphor that isn't as visual, but pushing the cuticle back on that horrible zombie fingernail.
That analogy was perfect. I couldn't possibly improve on it. So basically, what that means is, because I've been playing in the lethal zone. I'm not good enough to play in the lethal zone. But one thing that's been really nice about this update is, while I'm moving on to a harder difficulty level for myself, and also there's aspects of this. When you wake up a plague heart, it's suddenly more aggressive. There's a lot of bad stuff happening around you because you woke that plague heart. So there's some ways in which the game has gotten harder. You also have a lot more options. Like, you can actually make tactical decisions to change the outcome of a siege, to prevent a siege from happening, to weaken the incoming army before it launches. And so, because you have more options, I feel like even though some of these harder difficulty levels might be more intimidating in some ways, you also have more options for managing them. And I feel like in the end, it actually balances out to be a more maybe slightly more challenging, but also more satisfying experience.
We definitely wanted to give you a lot more choices about what to do between outpost defenses and radio calls and all the new tools that we've given you. All the fact that all these systems can be interrupted by you, the player. We wanted to make sure that if you wanted to do it, if you wanted to fight the system in a particular way, because that's just how you would react in the zombie apocalypse or how you run your community, we wanted to make that a viable path for you. If you wanted to sneak around and maintain the old play style of not really worrying about plague hearts until you loot the entire map and then start that phase of the game, you can. You just have to be really sneaky now, but you can still totally do that. So we tried to make it new and exciting and change things up for players that have been playing for a long time, but also still try to keep as many options open as possible.
So what happens if you're not at home during a siege? Like, I imagine there must be, some way to manage that situation. Actually, Brandon,
Yes.
Brandon, do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because I imagine that you probably had to test the boundaries of that. Like how far can the player go? What can they get away with before bad things start happening?
So I think the way, if you miss one wave in the siege, you can still come back to mitigate the future bad effects, negative effects, because it first starts out you lose ammo, you lose meds or just resources, but then the more waves you miss, you can get a damaged facility, or your survivors get some severe injuries, and
can you lose a survivor while you're away?
You cannot lose a survivor while you're away, but they can definitely get pretty banged up. Where is the boundary line? When does the game consider you to be away from your base? Is it outside the safe zone? Is it outside that wider radius that appears on the map? Where is it? It's your safe zone. The scouting zone is the dotted one, while the solid one with and inside that would be considered your safe zone.
Okay.
So
I think it might actually be a little bit bigger than that. From what I understand, you can actually go out to the siege sites, and as long as you killed something in the siege hordes themselves, it counts you as being part of the siege.
Oh,
from what I understand, we've made it really, really forgiving, and by we, I mean Zoe and Kat and our wonderful engineering team. So, yeah.
And that's also something the Haven device also helps with.
Oh wait. So tell me a little bit about the Haven device and what it does now during a siege.
I think if in terms of missing waves, it will give you, I think, 1 or 2 waves where you won't get negative effects here if you're home. So it's not just it's simulating killing zombies without you having to be there.
Okay, so if you're away from home and you have a Haven device, the Haven device will take care of the first couple, and you can get there late and it's fine because Cleo's got you covered.
Yep.
It's
Because I know we get a lot of questions. I'm sure we have some in our chat right now about what
I've seen a few, yeah.
Nerfing the Haven device. The fact that the Haven device no longer prevents sieges altogether, but it does still help with sieges while they're ongoing, and it also just helps you ambiently between sieges. It's just still killing zombies ambiently that are gathering around your base. Do I have that right?
Yeah.
Correct.
The ambient kill is about, the last I checked, it was 18 for every 15-minute charge. So every 15 minutes, it'll kill 18 zombies. And that goes throughout your entire safe zone of your base. If you have power. Otherwise, it's just, it's relegated to your base if you don't. But I've seen a lot of people talking about how it just doesn't seem to kill as many. That's true. But it still kills them, and it's still very helpful. Like Randy brought up earlier that the screamers now scream when they're at the edge of your base when they get there for the siege. That means they're also drawing in all of the ambient zombies that are around your base when they come in, and they're going to bring them into your base for the siege. So it's probably a good thing that the Haven device is still somewhat functional.
Yeah. And so, the reason, the Haven device, and when we were working on the Homecoming update and we added the Haven device to the game, it was during an era when, sieges were much simpler and also a little weirder. And they, and they were a little bit, basically, it was hard to orchestrate a really sort of clever and interesting way for Cleo through the Haven device to participate in a siege. And so we went for very simple answers, which included just destroying sieges altogether and making them not happen. But now that we've actually got a better version of the siege system, that we're doing with the Haven device what we would have done with the Haven device if we had had this first. If we had built this version of the siege system and then done the Homecoming update, this is how the Haven device would have worked. The only reason it didn't work this way at first was because we didn't have as good a siege and infestation system. So now you've got the version of the Haven device that we honestly always should have had. And so I hope you end up still enjoying it, those of you who are big Haven device aficionados. If you loved the fact that the Haven device was preventing sieges from happening at your base, the good news is you've got ways to prevent sieges from happening at your base. All the stuff we talked about, eliminating siege sites before they happen, that sort of thing. You've got plenty to do. And actually, it's honestly more interesting than just flipping a switch on a big green machine.
And it's cheaper.
I'm sorry, I was caught up in combat, but did anybody mention that morale is no longer tied to all infestations?
Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, Randy, do you want to talk about that a little bit before we move on?
Yeah. With the new amount of infestations that were on the map, we noticed immediately once we started testing that every single one of our community members was bummed out all the time. It was a huge bummer to be in update 33 until we removed that morale penalty, just because the amount of infestations on your map at any given time, you're no longer probably going to be in a spot where you're just not going to have any, and then everyone's happy again, and then you move back on. Once the system starts kicking in, you're going to be fighting a war for territory on the map, with plague hearts and infestations and stuff. So now we thought, also it just narratively, I don't know why Jim is upset that there's an infestation all the way across the map on the other side. That never really, I didn't really understand that. If that was like his family home, I could understand it or something. That's just a random house he has no attachment to. Why is he bummed out? The siege sites giving the morale penalty makes sense now because they can see those are the sites closest to them. They've got infestations on your doorstep. You know that they represent an actual tangible threat. Everyone being upset about that makes a lot more sense.
So we are running low on time, so let's move on to talking about, real quick, the new radio commands that were added to the game. Randy, do you want to give us a quick summary of what the new radio commands are and what they do?
Yeah, so we wanted to make sure you could leverage your survivors in some way to help out with infestations without you having to go micromanage all of it. We have one for scout infestations that will scout nearby infestations on the map. Then we have kill infestation, where you can literally send a survivor out to take care of an infestation for you. And they will literally leave your base, go take out an infestation, and come back. It's pretty neat.
So, Brandon, do we really simulate that? Like, if I'm standing at my base and I select go kill an infestation, does one of my characters walk out of the base and can I follow them to the infestation? I assume you must have tried that.
I think Joe just showed that that's definitely not how that works.
Okay, what happens? What really happens?
It's just they walk out, teleport to that place, but I guess they do technically spawn at that place if you go there, and they kill the infestation. And if you're not there, it just deletes the infestation. But it's significantly more immersion. There's more immersion in this execution than previous ones where it was just like you have a radio command, you do it, it deletes it, and that's it.
And there's less threat than the version where we actually did make the guy go walk directly to the site, where all sorts of things could happen to him. We got a lot of interesting bugs on that. So yeah, he does teleport so that you're not risking. We didn't want you to risk a survivor by sending them out on this call.
And they're technically immortal when they are in the world doing that very specific mission.
Okay. So you don't have to worry. They are going to be a helpful thing. This can't backfire on you.
Because I imagined if you made them immortal and they also walked there, you could just send them there and then have an immortal buddy with you along the way, right?
Just follow him and clean up his messes that he causes. Yeah, there was some fun stuff you could do.
Well, while we're talking, and while Joe's got like the menus open here, while we're talking about the options, the other options that the player has for dealing with infestations, let's talk about outpost defenses. So what are the new outpost defense options that players have? Because this is really reminiscent of State of Decay 1. This is actually one of the features that people who loved State of Decay 1 always would ask us about is, why can't I mine my outposts? Well, here it looks like we've got some options. So what are the two things that you can do at an outpost? Brandon, do you want to walk through it?
So at most outposts, you can mine them and also use bait to attract zombies to your base. With the caveats of if the outpost is literally next to your base, you can't mine it because who's going to put mines right next to their base where someone's going to actually step on them. And also it like end up just trivializing all sieges anyway.
I was going to ask about that. So you can't just make an impenetrable ring of outposts that are mined around your base and just have every horde that tries to attack you explode. But you can, a little bit further out, place those mines. And then what happens? Like, how do the mines actually help?
They just like kill all. I think it just might be a certain number of zombies that walk into the safe zone of that site will just explode, and it has a little effect, and it looks really, really cool. So and I think if you try to do a base close to your base, it even tells you like, don't put that in your base because that's dangerous.
So if you're actually present and you're trying to take refuge in your outpost and zombies are chasing you, they'll get blown up by the mines. But also even like if you're away from it and like they were going to go try to infest that outpost, will the mines protect them from that horde even if you're nowhere nearby?
Yeah, you'll see little noise blips if you look at it on your map. It's a good 1-2 punch if you want to kill an infesting horde if you're using bait in conjunction with it.
That was, yeah, I was going to ask that. Like, so can that be a strategy for trying to deal with hordes that are on their way to your base? So, like, you've got a bunch of hordes converging on your base. Can you pick a nearby outpost and say bait and mines, and then all of those hordes will converge and get destroyed?
It's definitely viable.
That's pretty cool. I love the fact that we kind of turned this into almost a tower defense game or an RTS or something like that, where you've got this other game that you're playing on a meta level on the map at the same time that you're running around in the world and living through all of this.
And there's also on radio towers and cell towers a signal disruptor, which acts as a way. It increases the amount of effort required to wake up a plague heart.
Oh, really? So it kind of almost like provides you with cover so you can screw around a little bit more without waking any plague hearts?
Yeah.
It currently reduces awakening triggers by, I think, about 80%. So while it's active, certainly, you know, I saw some comments coming in about like, there's no way to sleep a plague heart. No, but there's ways to make it very hard to wake up, which is what you would want to do. Is a little bit of forethought will save you a lot of consequence in this new update. So turn on your signal disruptor, go into plague territory, do your mission that's really close next to a plague heart, and use a little bit of stealth. Try a crossbow instead of a loud rifle, and you'll be fine. You can actually get out in lethal without tripping up a plague heart by doing a couple things in plague territory that way.
All right. Well, we've gone over all of the details of the new features that were added specifically for the heart attack update. But there's actually a lot of smaller stuff that also went into this update at the same time, including some quality of life fixes. So when a character is busy with a job that they got through a radio command or any other thing, you can now see that on the community screen. You've got like a character, they'll actually be marked as busy now. Is it just from radio command missions, or are there other things that can mark a character as busy too? We might not know the answer to that question.
I don't know. I think I want to say that if they're busy on silly actions and stuff, you know, like building or whatever, you know, I think that is also there, but Don't quote me on it.
Okay, yeah, well, I won't quote you on it.
Sponsors. That's a whole nother forums.
Yeah, so basically, yeah. So characters, they'll get marked as busy if they're in the middle of one of those missions. And that means you can't accidentally assign them to do other things. You can't suddenly exile them or do other things with them while they're out, because that would be nonsensical and create a bunch of problems. Thinking about some of the other quality of life fixes that went into update 33, larger vehicles now have more trunk space. Do you want to tell me about a little bit of the thinking that went into that, Randy?
Yeah, just it's been a while since the high occupancy, high cargo load vehicles were put in, and things like the trekker, kind of invalidated some things. Like the car. Why would you get a cargo van if you can get a trekker? So, making it to where you had a reason to take those big bulky vehicles. Also, that's just that fantasy is just. I don't know how everyone else plays State of Decay, but I am a weird looter person, and I want the biggest. I want to drive a giant treasure chest from building to building and load it with goodies. So playing into that fantasy is key, but also just helping people out. We want people to play in the way that they like playing and do it a little easier every time.
So by and large, it's basically vans and pickup trucks and SUVs got this benefit. So if you go to them, you'll see they have a lot more. In fact, you've added a scroll bar to their cargo space so that we can get up to like 50. Is 15 the maximum? I think
15 is the maximum, but the scroll bar was there already.
Oh, was it? I didn't remember that.
Yeah, we just never set it that high.
Never used it. Never had the occasion.
Nice forethought. Whoever built that UI. Wow.
Yeah. So it was interesting because one of the big player complaints that was out there, especially among our veterans, was that they really didn't like having to come back after looting 3 or 4 buildings. Or having to create, temporary outposts around, like now, especially now with that you can upgrade outposts, we don't want people just abandoning them all willy-nilly and everything. So the idea here was, we can't change the size of everything, but it makes a lot more sense that a cargo van would carry twice as much as a hatchback with one of those things on top, whatever those things are called.
The trekker.
Yeah, the trekker. But I was talking about whatever the thing is on top.
The top trunk.
The top trunk.
The top trunk, where you put your skis and stuff. All right, I grabbed an anniversary cake for a reason, but it also includes the Wranglers, and then an oversight on my part. It does not include the Trumbull Valley 4x4 or the Burninator.
Yeah,
so
some players found that. Some players found that after the fact, but yeah. So we've noticed that issue. If we get the chance to make an adjustment to that later on, maybe we will. But that's only a couple of trucks, and those trucks are much more fast and agile than the other high capacity vehicles. So I think they've still got a reason to exist, even if they didn't get the same upgrade that the rest of the vehicles got. Another quality of life fix, you can now drop individual first aid kits. It used to be if you had a stack of 2 first aid kits, you had to drop the entire stack. That sort of illustrates an issue because we've got so many different kinds of inventory items with different rules for how they stack and everything. I mean, it's kind of a bunch of different entangling rules, and that the first aid kits just ended up at a nexus of just a bunch of different rules we designed for different reasons. So Brandon, I imagine it must be tough to sort of like when you've got a game with this many different things going on and it's so complex, trying to find every possible combination of actions has got to be a little bit of a nightmare.
It is definitely difficult to go through all of the different types of loot, how they interact with each other. Do they require animations? Because I know Etron, there's the change with the bandages and.
That's right. Yeah, that's one of our bug fixes. Yeah, the basically bandages. It used to be if you used a bandage at a supply locker and then backed out of the supply locker, it would cancel the bandage. Is that what it was?
Yeah, because the healing was tied to an animation, and if you ever interrupted that animation, it could cut short, which probably at the beginning sounded good, but there's a lot of things that cancel out that animation.
Yeah, things that the player would not expect to do that, including leaving the supply locker. Another big change that we made was vertical view angles have now been expanded. So it used to be that there's a much harder limit on how high you could look up and how far you could look down. And now we've broadened it so you can actually look much further down below you, much further above you. Why do we know? Why was it limited before? What can go wrong if your character can look too far up and too far down?
I mean, it could break the skeleton, especially in multiplayer. You're gonna people's backs don't go into L shapes usually. I also
Not without a loud crack.
Yeah, you're not gonna hear anybody screaming, but it's also I like to stand on top of cars and shoot down with a crossbow, so definitely conducive with that playstyle.
Yeah, I remember a lot of sort of having to tap dance around on the top, trying to move my character into a position where I could aim down at something that was below me, and now it's so much easier to do. Other bug fixes that we've gone through. Ferals can once again climb walls in Daybreak. I didn't realize how long ago did that break? Because I imagine that probably made Daybreak a lot less challenging if Ferals couldn't subvert your defenses.
Well, I don't think the first few waves. I don't think they're that integral to the difficulty.
I guess eventually, yeah, probably. It's more the Juggernaut smashing down the walls that caused a bigger problem, huh?
It wasn't so much that, it was more that the Ferals that couldn't climb the walls, they would, or climb the walls that meant to go after the tech. They would start targeting the walls that you could get, and they would target it from the back of the Daybreak map. So they'd be at the back of the Daybreak map and pushing their shoulder into your walls. So not only did you not know that they were there, because their AI was broken, they were they were trying to break down your walls, which is not something they were supposed to do.
Well, I'm glad we fixed that. Apparently, we also fixed a crash bug where some communities were actually crashing on load before, and they're now usable. Now, was that a bug that was actually in the wild, or is that a bug in the PTR that we fixed in Update 33?
It depends on which one, but there are definitely combinations of certain traits with certain characters that don't work super well. And when we get those, we hopefully have the save and can fix them on a case-by-case basis. Because I mean, you know how many traits there are and how...
Oh, I know. That was months of my life. Okay, yeah.
Not conducive.
So, okay, yeah. So there were some players who were struggling with save games they just couldn't load that hopefully they can now load and they can get back into the game again. And now, this is my favorite bug fix, the ranged weapon sorting. It used to be a long time ago that when you sorted the ranged weapons by type, they would all be arranged by caliber. And so you have the 50 cals and the 40 millimeter grenades at the end, the 22s at the beginning of the list. But they got all scrambled up during the Forever Communities update when we added the variety of different sorting options. That particular one, the one that we originally had, got screwed up. But that is fixed now, as I understand.
Yep. Should be essentially back to normal. I think there's one or two things that are sorted equally now that what used to be. But your calibers, your big important things should be and you play cures and stuff at the top, back to the way that everybody liked it.
Yeah, I had an old-fashioned siege in one of my saves. I had an original type siege that I needed to deal with, and so and because I was in the lethal zone, I was absolutely terrified of it, and so I had to run over to my supply locker and very quickly give grenade launchers and 50 cals to as many of my people as possible, and it was suddenly so much easier to find those weapons because they were all organized correctly. So I really, really appreciated that.
I remember watching that stream.
I didn't know you were there. Okay, cool, awesome. So audio on the community creation screen no longer repeats or spams you. I don't actually know what that's talking about. Brandon, do you know exactly what was going on there?
I think that's the little ticks you get when you scroll or highlight buttons. It's all the confirmation sounds, because I think if you highlight over too many times, the sound effect event plays too often, and then you can get stuck in a true state and just play over and over.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, that sounds really, really annoying. It never happened to me, luckily, but I'm one of the lucky ones, and now hopefully it will happen to 0 people. And then finally, we changed the key mapping for sending people back to the legacy pool to avoid some conflicts that apparently were going on. Was that mostly on non-English keyboards that there were conflicts between that button and another button? That's how I understood it, though. Yeah, go ahead.
That was the actual conflict that I think provoked the change.
It's like French keyboards and stuff like that were like, we basically took that action and put it on a button that we thought was free, but on some keyboards it wasn't free because of certain existing key mappings. Now, some players reported right after the update happened that their send to pool option had become unbound because of it. So if somebody gets into that situation, Brandon, and they see basically on their community screen, they see a little X on an empty circle instead of a key binding. What should they do about that?
If you see the X on any icon in the game, I think your first response should go settings, control maps, and then revert to default. And that should be your first go-to for any time you see that X, even on that legacy menu.
Okay, cool. So basically what that will do is it'll set all of your controls to the default that we set up, including because what can happen is if you have changed some of the default keybinds on your machine, that will be saved somewhere. And then when we issue an update that alters them, your save is what will be remembered. And so some of our stuff can get broken that way. So if you reset to defaults, that means that if you do have custom keybinds, you'll have to reset them up again, but at least you'll definitely get everything working the way we intended it, and then you can customize it again. Or if it's just one place and you know exactly what you want to change it to, you can just target a little change there yourself. But yeah, Brandon's absolutely right. The thing that I always do is reset to default, and then it's fine. So those are the bug fixes, and I think that we've gotten through the patch notes just in time for the end of the stream. But one thing we did not do was answer any questions from the audience, and I'm feeling very sad about that. So I've got a question for my guests. Do you want to stick around for another extra 15 minutes and try to get to some of these viewer questions?
Sure.
Do we have moderators for that one?
I'm not sure, but one thing we can do is stop taking additional questions so the moderators can go take a vacation if they want to. Wonder and Megan, if you can stick around, we would love it, but if you can't, let us know. And also, Wonder, tell me if I need to pull the ripcord and just put an end to the stream. But while I'm waiting for that answer, let's try to sneak in a couple of questions as we go. So let me read down this list that I have not even looked at yet. So I need to have some kind of triage system here. Wonder says, let's do it. We're going for it. Okay. Let's tackle some of the viewer questions that came in while we were going over the patch notes. So let's see here. So Nathaniel Wagner asks, can Plague Hearts remain dormant forever if you just avoid the plague zones and you never step into their territory at all? So there's no timer, yes. Nothing, no backstop, nothing saying, well, eventually the player has to get attacked. No, you really can just keep them asleep.
We experimented with that. We did have some timers that kicked on at certain intervals, or certainly if you were trying to progress your legacy, you need to take out the plague hearts and certain things. But at the end of the day, the mantra was for update 33 was put in the player's hands to control the tempo of their game. If they want to go wake up 20 plague hearts and on lethal, and do we even have 20? But just wake up every single plague heart and then have a blast for 5 minutes until you die. Go for it. If you want to carefully loot the entire map before you wake up a single plague heart, that's me. You can still absolutely do that too. So it's really up to you to dictate the pace of your map.
So we did get a question from Zach the Zombie that we already answered earlier in the stream, which is when I try to summon somebody to the legacy pool, it says unbound. Why? And that is because we changed the key binding, and there's a chance that some players may have a setup where they have to hit, like Brandon was saying before, they've got to hit reset to defaults on the control settings, and that will put it back to normal. I just wanted to read that again because I wanted Zach the Zombie to get credit for asking the question. Let's see here. Yeah, so Sejao is one of probably multiple people who've asked about the Haven device being nerfed, basically. And, I think we've already answered the question, but I don't know, Randy, do you want to give a quick little summary of, how we're feeling about the Haven device and what people should do if they got really used to the Haven device and now they want to have the same advantage over the Hordes?
We agonized over the Haven device a lot. We did a lot of digging into it. The problem was essentially is that it just didn't work after we made all the changes, and it just didn't do anything anymore. The old mission that it would help, that it would bypass, and all these things didn't exist anymore. So all the fun we had to think around outside the box there. We did look at how many communities actually even had the Haven device installed. It was pretty low single digits. We looked at the total cost of running it, and tried to see if we couldn't take some of that and put that into the radio calls and all that. We knew that there would be some people who weren't happy that it just doesn't bypass sieges anymore. But it couldn't do what it did before. We had to make some changes. So we liked it where it landed in terms of it providing a benefit both to away from base sieges. So if you're not present there, it'll clear a wave and you don't get any consequences. We like that. We like it still killing at least a wave's amount of zombies before it goes on cooldown in person. If you have feedback on it, feel free to shoot it at us for sure. We're still listening and collecting all that. It didn't survive. The original design did not survive the CU-33.
So Sage specifically called out the 15-minute cooldown. They felt like that was a little dramatic, and they felt like that they would prefer the cooldown to be a little bit shorter. I'm curious. I don't know, having not used the Haven device yet in the new setting, I don't really know much about the feel of that. I'm curious how you feel about the timing of that.
So part of this is that, like, as Randy pointed out, we've changed how infestations in general function, right? And then also how sieges in general function. And so what we did was we took the way that we ended up balancing it is we took it to we took a moment to look at how many zombies came in the first wave. So it was very much tied to the siege balance that was there. And so when you're away from base, the Haven device will negate the entire first wave. Mm-hmm. And so the idea was that the Haven device, if you're there in person, should have a similar result, right? And so we went with approximately 18 to 20, and that's enough for the first wave anywhere.
So it kills 18 to 20 zombies, and then it goes on a 15-minute cooldown, which means that the siege will probably be done by the time that cooldown comes back and it's killing zombies again.
Right. So that's what we were trying to preserve, was the balance of the new siege system.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Now the problem that I pointed out earlier is that it does also kill these ambient zombies, but that goes towards the count of its cooldown, which some people might think is problematic. But as I also pointed out earlier, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because the screamers will pull in the ambient zombies to your base during a siege.
Isn't there a second timer to prevent that from happening? There's a second timer.
There's a cooldown reset timer that we put in that's pretty generous now. So we're trying to balance it to such that we see those concerns, and I know that there's other concerns about, if you put a watchtower in your base, it increases the radius, which increases the range of varies. There's a lot of knock-on effects on this, so for sure keep all the questions and weird situations that you get into with the Haven device coming, for sure.
Yeah. We'll be listening and keeping track of that stuff, and
I'm not going to promise anything, but
yeah, traditionally we don't promise specific answers to specific problems until we know we've got a solution. But definitely, the way to have us take notice is to continue to provide that feedback to us. So we really appreciate it, and we want to know the experiences you're having. And we're not done with this game yet, so there's always lots of opportunities for us to continue to address things if people are having trouble with them. So when we were talking about the fact that plague hearts are not listening to literal noises, they're not giant ears, as Randy said, something Viscid pointed out that do firecrackers occasionally cause minor damage to zombies, and could a firecracker potentially damage a zombie and help wake up a plague heart? I genuinely don't know. I'm curious if anyone here does.
I don't know if they have damage. I'm going to look real quick here.
Okay,
if they have a damage value. I am also curious.
Yeah, while he's looking that up, Bob Cadaver had a question. Why are some of the hearts visible on Trumbull Valley on the lethal zone on a fresh start? I noticed that too, actually. I had 2 hearts visible from the very outset when I started my lethal zone game in Trumbull Valley, and I wasn't sure why they were visible. Do we know? Is that just potentially a bug, or is that intentional in some way?
I think it's just a long-standing bug. I know that the starter or the tutorial does reveal the starter one. I think it just might be a knock-on from that.
Okay, so that
Yeah,
is a
that-
known issue.
There is something in is it Cascade specifically after you do Osprey? There is it's Providence Ridge, right?
Yeah. There is a when you move on to Providence Ridge from Osprey, there is definitely at least
There
one
is-
plague heart that's revealed then. So maybe there's a similar
But
thing
all other
going on in
instances are
Trumbull.
probably
Yeah, I could see there because Trumbull has got all these missions, for instance, that get initiated. I could see there being something where like certain sites get revealed because of initializing missions, and maybe that's showing you where plague hearts are. I'm genuinely not certain, but it does something. Yeah, so we're all acknowledging that is a weird thing that happens. It's not intentional. I don't know. Maybe we'll figure it out someday. Fred Garvin has a very important question for Randy, which is what is on that ball cap?
one of my favorite cryptids, the Mothman.
Oh, okay, cool. I was actually going to guess Bigfoot, but I was wrong. I couldn't see it from here. So
It's here. We'll get close.
Oh, there it goes. We can totally see. Well, so earlier on when we were negotiating with Discord to figure out how we were going to get everyone's faces on the screen, we had a version of this presentation where Randy was pixelated within an inch of his life, and there's no way you would have been able to identify Mothman. But luckily we were able to make that work a little bit better.
The question would have been like, what's with Randy's weird hair?
Yeah, exactly. Let's see here. Oh, Surreal Diagonal says, if your actions that would wake up a heart are spaced out over a long period of time, does it take more actions to wake it up?
Indeed, it does.
So is there like a cooldown on the number of actions, or like it says, oh, you've accumulated this much, but do they start ticking down again if you don't do anything for a while?
So yes, while Plague Hearts once awakened won't go dormant again, Plague Heart that is awakening will eventually reset back to 0 if you leave it alone. So that is something to keep in mind for sure. There's a big strategy around like making one oopsie and then backing out is you're gonna buy all that time back without having to do much.
In one of our updates, we added a sleep psychology trait and skill to the game, and Sidechat the Gray suggests that if you've got a sleep psychologist, they should be able to put hearts back to sleep.
I love the idea. We would have to balance it and do some work for sure on the design side, but
it's not something a trait is typically capable of doing. So yeah,
I've seen so many people talk about ingenious ways to fit in fiction.
Yeah,
sleeping Plague Heart.
We should add like a singing skill that lets you like sing lullabies to put them back to sleep or something like that.
Or I mean, just some sort of like round that requires you to use medicine and plague samples, and then you just like inject the heart with sleep medicine, puts it back to sleep.
Just NyQuil.
Yeah, just walk up and dump it all over the heart.
Let's see here. So, sorry, I've got a long one. Peroxicus has a long question, and I haven't read it yet, so I'm going to read it, and I don't know if it's going to be one we can answer. This update did such a good job at taking seemingly random pieces and tying them together via the narrative that I've been thinking of for the game as a whole. The part I don't yet know is, has it been stated where the Plague Hearts came from, or what created them? Or is that something that maybe could be revealed in a future update? I don't think we've got an answer to that. I think that
I don't think we have a hard answer. I think Heartland, if you play Heartland and you talk to
like Dr. Hoffman and
right, I think there's some discussion the plague walls and certain plague structures and how that works, but I don't think we get very explicit.
Yeah, I think most of the time, like the way what we try to do in our lore is less about trying to answer questions like that and more about just having the characters around you be asking them alongside you. So that we acknowledge that those questions are there. But we usually don't try to give you the answers because it's kind of the vibe of the game. I think is better if it's mysterious, if it's like we don't know where this is coming from, but it's trying to kill us and we have to survive. It's kind of a better environment than I'm Sherlock Holmes and I'm trying to decode, what's going on. So Vikia asks, why did the preview of lootable items from a Plague Heart disappear? That's something I hadn't noticed. So, like, did we used to show information about a Plague Heart's loot that we now are no longer showing? Maybe because we have other things we need to show in that UI as well. Or do you two know much about what's going on there?
I do know there's situations where enough stuff was in the flyout that it could like get truncated to the point of where it was just going off the screen. And I think every single Plague Heart had that in them. So I think we just came down to like the point where just show the stuff that is variation of what is possible in a play card, because you know it's going to have a gun, you know it's going to have a backpack, you know it's going to have like.
That's true. Yeah, it was consistent enough that that maybe that wasn't the most important information, and since we were adding so much more information to that flyout, it made sense to maybe cull the thing that was a little bit less useful. So that's probably the best answer you're going to get, and that makes a lot of sense. Let's see here. So this
does not look like firecrackers deal damage.
Okay, good. Okay,
but they totally do. On stream, I just showed I dropped a firecracker at the heart of a sleeping at the foot of a play. Yeah, it woke it up because it does little to tiny. I was about to say
there's no damage, but there is a fire, and it is creating a little
it
fire.
Probably set it slightly on fire, and that caused damage. That makes sense.
Because it used to be that there was an exploit with road flares or firecrackers or whatever you wanted. It might even still be there, and then you take like a bloater gas grenade, you drop the firecrackers, you drop the bloater gas grenade, and that would completely and it would just obliterate a heart.
Yeah.
So anyway, if it's still in there, I'm so sorry that I just told you how to cheese our entire game. However,
don't tell them about the bait, or that's going to be a nightmare.
The infestation bait where you throw it on the.
Yeah. Okay, so
that new one.
So O wants to know: have we been looking at the wish list recently? So basically, we do go back and look at the wish list all the time whenever we're making decisions about where we're going to go. That doesn't mean we don't use it as sort of like a list of marching orders. Like, okay, the order in which things appear in the wish list, we'll do this and this and this and this, because we do need to make a lot of sort of creative decisions about what this game is going to be, and those decisions do ultimately, we're responsible for those decisions on the team, and we need to make those calls. But absolutely, I mean, I don't know, Randy, you were nodding as I started to answer. Like, we do pay attention to that, and it matters to us what people are looking for, even if we can't give people exactly what they're asking for all the time.
Absolutely. Keep all that coming. It's invaluable as designers working on a live title to know what people are looking for, where their interests are. Even if we can't deliver exactly, like Geoffrey's saying, if we can't get you exactly what you want, knowing that you want it is important to the decisions that we make and the things that we focus on.
Yeah. And by the way, I look at it too, and I'm not on the State of Decay 2 team. So there's all kinds of different ways, different people who might have an interest in what you're all asking for. So there you go. Liam has got kind of a UX question. If infestations are from plague hearts, then why are they green on the map and not red or an orange tone? Now, some of them are an orange tone. The ones that are going to attack your base are definitely orange. But yes. Did some thought go into like potentially recoloring them, and how did that come together?
We did accessibility comparisons just in terms of color coding. I don't know if you guys have noticed, we kind of use red a lot. So for red colorblind individuals and players, adding yet another like a salmon-y, like we added a salmon for the dormant plague hearts. Like we even in our attempts to avoid adding more red, we did add more shades of red. So just finding anything on the color spectrum that isn't reserved on State of Decay 2. Green we use for harsh, like emerald green we use for like mission headers. There's a lot of color that is used everywhere just because it's such a big game. There's so much UI that we just found a clean, readable version for people with all sorts of color blindness, and we wanted to make sure that you could see the infesting hordes pop really cleanly because they're interceptable, and they're really the metric of, they're like the little progress bar for the plague heart and fighting back against you, right? Basically.
Yeah, and it's not just for like people who are colorblind, but also people with other kinds of like low vision, vision impairments. Like having to be this dramatic contrast between different colors of things on the map can probably really help folks for whom the seeing every single pixel is not really an option. Let's see here. So Quintarius Quincy, we should correct a misconception that Quintarius got. They asked, did they just confirm that you cannot lose a survivor during a siege? No, I think that Brandon was talking about the fact you couldn't lose a survivor by sending them out on a mission, right?
Yes. You can't lose a survivor if you leave the base. And right. So there's two kinds of sieges, right? There's the in-person siege where you're there and you're fighting, and then there's the siege that gets kind of simulated, and we send these new messages out that tell you like, so and so got injured defending the first wave, and your blank facility broke in the second wave. You know, you lost Y resources in the third. It's kind of the way that we simulate the siege now. So it's a bit more in depth and it's a bit more by wave. But one of the potential wave consequences is not that so and so just dies while you aren't there.
So yeah, so if you do decide to let your people at your base handle the siege on their own, they will not die, but there will be other costs that you pay. And so there's like reasons to come home to prevent those other costs, but you're not coming home to save the lives of your people because that's not at stake from the siege system. And that's not a change from the like originally. Like if you also stayed away during a siege, during the old kind of siege, I believe that randomly killing characters was also not a thing we did then. We would just charge you a bunch of ammo and damage your base.
Yep.
Well, and you know, just to go back to what Randy said earlier about the mantra for this update was talking about things that were within the player's control. And if the player chooses to stay away from the base or just can't make it back in time because, you know, your car broke down and you're way down here and your base is way up at the north, and you just don't have time to get back to your base, we shouldn't necessarily kill someone in your community because you're already struggling and you may lose the survivor you're, you know, struggling to get home with. So yeah, anyway, in-base consequences versus out away from base.
Okay, yeah, so I had originally misread what Quintarius was talking about, and so it sounds like Quintarius did zero in on something that is absolutely true. But it's not something that has changed since the previous version of the game. It's just something that maybe it's a little bit more prominent now that sieges are a more integrated part of the experience. Let's see here. So, Sidechat the Grey asked a similar question about like, are there any dangers to a player who is out scouting for infestations? It sounds like we said no. You send somebody out to scout an infestation, you're not putting their lives at risk. Just confirming that's right?
Correct.
And then, let's see here. Rio Kuxian, and I'm probably spelling that terribly wrong, and I'm so sorry, asks, I don't know if it was covered, but how much do outposts affect siege timers or waves, if any? Does the location of the outpost affect it more? Like if the outpost is closer or further away from base, will it affect how sieges behave? So does the placement of your outposts affect sieges? Aside from the fact that they might, for instance, if you have the mind, they could stop hordes from propagating. Is there any other effect that they have, or are they just kind of separate from the timing of sieges and hordes?
And there's also bait, which also could probably pull them away as well.
Okay, so those tools that you have, those options that you have on the actual things, those you can use those to affect. But basically, there's not like counting the number of outposts and then slowing down the number of sieges. There's no feature like that running in the background.
No.
Seijiao, go ahead.
But one thing that I would point out is that the tactical placement of your outposts is important. Like if you'll notice in this, I lost this outpost early on because I forgot to re-up the mines. However, that outpost, which is just south of my base, blocks off the entryway from the most likely entryway of the hordes that are coming from the plague hearts to create siege sites. And so any hordes that would create infestations that would be close enough to be siege sites are going to get destroyed on their way to try to create them. So like there is a way you can just completely shut off an entire part of the map.
So you can cleverly use outposts to block the hordes and prevent siege sites from accumulating, especially just depending on where you're settling, what the pattern of roads and access is. You could have some options there, but it's not like there's a blanket effect that they have. It's more of a tactical placement effect that they have.
Correct.
And actually, talking about those options you have on outposts, Seijiao had noticed that apparently there are some. They said there's some power outposts that have lures and some that don't. Do you know what might cause some outposts to have some of these options and some not to have those options?
I do, but Randy might too.
Randy's nodding. Let's say, Randy, do you want to try to give that an answer?
Yeah. Certain outposts are like the cell tower. There's not really, a lot of physical area around it. So for things like bait, or mines, they can be a little awkward. The signal disruptor being on there makes a ton of sense. So you're going to see things like, certain facilities didn't make sense to have mines around them or this or that. So it's usually very specific, and it's only a couple, I believe, that are non-standard.
Speaking of the signal disruptor, Warbucks wants to know, does that affect the entire map at once, or does it have a radius?
It is the entire map.
It is global.
So you do not need more than one.
On your map. No, because I don't believe the effects stack. If you wanted to have two, so you could always have one within reach, sure. But yeah, there's no strategic reason to have two signal disruptors.
Is it? Raneth Cord wants to know: is it possible, especially at lower difficulty levels, to actually have two plague hearts next to each other and turn on a signal disruptor and kill one heart without waking the other heart, or is a heart death so powerful that it'll definitely wake up a nearby heart no matter what you do? Or is it?
That's a good question.
Question mark.
Heart death is one of our most powerful triggers, so I could see it going either way. I have to double check.
Okay, so it's possible that there could be enough things you could stack up to make that be suppressed, maybe, but I probably wouldn't bank on it because it's such a powerful trigger.
Yeah.
All right, let's see here. And, okay, I think final one. This is the last question that I'm going to let everybody go. Warbucks wants to know, can sieges break the infirmary specifically? Are there any facilities that are immune to breakage during a siege?
I don't think so. But he did ask a question of what happens to all the people that are checked in when it breaks, which is a fantastic question.
They get checked out.
Yeah, so,
I want to say it boots them out, right?
Yeah, I mean that would probably be one of the harsher consequences for abandoning your base if you've got some people that are like being held stable from blood plague, and then your infirmary takes a hit. Those people could die as a result of a siege. Warbucks might have discovered the way that somebody could die because of a siege, but it's a pretty specific situation.
You may have. It might also be whitelisted in there to work differently. On our end, it's called destroy facility, which is
makes sense.
Pretty, I mean, it does, but there might be something in the script that prevents or has a special case for handling infirmary that just isn't obvious to us when we script it. So I'd have to double check to be 100% sure, but I think all facilities in general, like what happens if a facility is being built or upgraded while it gets broken, I think in general, anything in progress gets canceled, and I want to say it boots them out of the infirmary, but don't quote me on it.
All right.
I'm pretty sure.
Oh, go ahead, Joe.
No, that wasn't me. That was Brandon.
Oh, it was Brandon. Sorry.
I was saying I'm pretty sure it does, because that was a thing before this update as well.
Okay.
Right. I think that was all baseline behavior for destroy facility, which should already have been handled a long time ago.
Oh, hey, you just added somebody to, you just got a follower named Cord, who's named after an old friend of mine, another game developer. That was cool. Anyway, we have kept these people way too long, and this is one of the longer streams we've done, but I just, we got so many good questions coming in from the chat. I just really wanted to make sure we didn't just abandon all you folks. So thank you for hanging out with us for this long. Thank you for all of the support from the audience that went into making this thing even possible, because I mean, this is one of the longest amounts of time we have ever spent on an update. I mean, I think when we were working on Homecoming, we spent a pretty long time on Homecoming before we released it. I think this went even longer, but a huge part of that was the fact that it wasn't just our team internally that was doing it. You folks out in the audience were playing different versions of this, giving us feedback, letting us know, what was working and what wasn't. And so much of this is built on your backs. We really, really appreciate everything that you folks have done. So let's say goodbye to our guests. Randy, you got any last words for our audience before we head out?
Oh, you stole most of mine.
Sorry.
We made this for you guys, with you guys. I'm very excited. The community's been involved this whole time, and keep it coming. Let us know what you think. Give us feedback. We're listening.
And Brandon, you got anything you want to say before we go?
Yeah, just keep playing, keep those saves, keep reporting bugs, and this isn't the last update.
And Joe, I know you're very busy right now, but you got anything you want to say before we get out of here?
I just want to say that I am blessed to have one of the best jobs in the world, working with all of these wonderful people on this stream, and also out there maybe watching the stream. And it's not possible without you players giving us that feedback. It isn't possible without you going into the PTR, testing the features that are in, that are in development. And so a big thanks to our audience, a big thanks to everybody that I work with, and just can't be done without you.
Well, yeah, and I've got huge thank yous to those of you who are here and the entire State of Decay 2 team. I mean, it was tough for me to pull myself away from the State of Decay 2 team when I left, but I clearly left this team in incredibly good hands. I mean, this project has been accomplishing amazing things in my absence with me not having to do a thing. I just get to enjoy it as a player, and it's great. So thank you to you three and everybody else on the team, many of whom you've met on previous streams, audience. Anyway, let's get the crap out of here. So the next stream we do is going to be on June 4th. I'm going to be hosting that one. I don't know what we're doing. We'll figure it out later. But in the meantime, go and play the Heart Attack update. Have fun. I'll be out there with you. And if you're watching this later on YouTube, there's a bunch of crap you can click on. So click on stuff on this screen. And we'll be done in 20 seconds.
You think they bought it?
I hope they all bought the game if they're not paying for it on Game